Welcome back to the Whatnauts review show, where every week we have a different story to talk about. It could be a comic, could be a movie, could be a TV show, anime, manga, audio, drama, all sorts of stuff. We read it, we watch it, we come back here and talk about it. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing good. I got a new phone for the first time in like 5 years.
Ooh.
Look at it. It's beautiful.
Fancy schmancy. What kind is it?
This is the Galaxy S23, upgraded from my last phone, the 8. So it's been quite some time. So you pick out the color. They come in colors now. When I bought mine, it was like black or gray. Mine gets to be lavender. So you get the case and you get the new pop socket. And you do the cute part of the job, and then you have to spend like an hour and a half logging back into every app you've ever used.
Yep. Has there been any kind of like new feature you're not used to yet? Like, do you have like facial recognition where your old one did not, or something like that?
I could have set it up. My old phone didn't have a security lock on it, and I thought, let me do it on the new one. So that's an adjustment that every time I want to be like, how much time is left in this podcast episode? I have to log myself in. I'm not a fan of that.
It's not on the home screen. Can you like customize your home screen to have a clock on it so you don't even have to sign in to?
Okay, well that I can get, but I'm so fussy. Like, all right, how much do I have left? What's next? What's next in my podcast queue? Can you remind me, like, what day did this podcast come out? Like, I need so much information about it. On my old phone, I was like so fussy with like turning it off, turning it back on, clicking on stuff. And now this is probably good that like the extra barrier of having to like do a security swipe or whatever is going to keep me from being so like fussy and twitchy with it.
There you go. Yeah, I just reorganized my phone recently, so I'm still getting used to where everything is
right
at. Exactly.
I just realized that in Podcast Addict, it doesn't have to filter by like genre or alphabetically. You can do a custom sort to where your favorite podcasts appear at the top. So I just did that finally. So I'm not just saying whatever happens to start with A. I can see the ones that are actually like grade A in my heart.
Exactly. Speaking of grade A in some people's hearts, the movie that we are talking about this week is the 1983 sci-fi fantasy Krull. This is, it's an interesting one. It's a wild one. It has much more of a cult following than it did critical success. I'll say it front. It's not a great movie, but it's kind of fun. Like, there's some interesting stuff in here. There's some stuff to laugh at. There is one thing that I was actually like, that's actually really cool. Like, I like how they did this thing here. Mm-hmm. That's neat. This one was a wild ride. I wanted to bring this one on the show, or this is one of the ones that I pitched because this year it's been my goal to get more sword and sorcery movies or comics or who knows what, just on the podcast. That's a genre that we've been sorely lacking in. We've already read some Red Sonja comics, and that we felt was kind of your stereotypical like sword and sorcery stuff. It's what you would kind of expect. And this one is sword and sorcery, but with a twist. With a sci-fi twist. And so we thought that would be a good thing to explore next.
I mean, barely. I think at the beginning of the movie, there is a spaceship that goes to a planet. But then you're just on that planet and it might as well be like medieval Earth. Like, you really can't tell.
But there's aliens, there's magic, there's swords, there's like monsters and stuff. Like, it has all of the trappings of a sword and sorcery film. But with that sci-fi twist, you could also just be like, well, yeah, it's kind of a sci-fi film. I guess you could say it's that. But yeah, that's at the start. I was like, it's sci-fi fantasy. Like, maybe that's a more accurate description. But Either way.
It's sci-fi in that you can definitely see that it came out post Star Wars. It's in that run of films where people are like, can we get a little bit of that Star Wars panache going over here?
Yeah, let's just like Luke Skywalker did in the most recent Star Wars trilogy. He's sucking on the teat of that wild animal, hoping that he can get just some milk, right?
Give us that good Star Wars milk. Exactly. Our milkiest franchise. Exactly. I respect that you wanted to bring a genre to the show that we haven't covered before, although I was trepidatious that right at the outset, you're like, we will do this 3 times this year. When we read Red Sonja, and I'm like, that seemed quintessential. I think that checked every box. I think we've covered it. Do we need more than Red Sonja? So you gave me these. I wasn't super hot on any of them, but I picked Krull because that's a title I know, but I realized I don't know if Krull is a person, a place, an event, a state of being. Like, what is Krull? What does that mean? So I picked it for that reason. I wasn't super excited about it. And then I turned it on and I was so pleasantly surprised. This movie is not at all what I thought it was going to be. I really enjoyed it.
Sure, yeah.
The title Krull sounds so heavy metal.
Yes.
I was expecting something that looked more Conan the Barbarian, was more dark, cringy, bloody, gory sort of stuff.
Frazetta artwork.
Yes,
the
exactly.
Knockoff Slayer font, right? Like,
yes. Like Krull, when you say it, it sounds like you're supposed to see it on a t-shirt in a logo that you can't read. And you have to sheepishly ask the person, does that say something or are those just shapes? And they're like, it's Krull. It's my favorite metal band.
How do you not know Krull, the Demon Slayer?
Right. But instead you turn it on and it's a fairy tale. It's got real Princess Bride vibes to it. We've got this like
that's a good pull.
Gentle feathered hair protagonist. He looks like a folk rock singer.
Hair.
Right.
Immaculate.
It is tonally so different from what I thought it was going to be. And I actually had a really great time. I was upset that I had never seen it before. Like, this is a pretty family-friendly adventure. You know, like there's some moments of perhaps more than mild peril. But overall, I'm like, my parents could have shown this to me when I was a kid and I would have liked it. Why didn't 6-year-old Melissa get to see Krull? Why do I have to be 32 before I see Krull?
It did not do well initially when it came out. It got lambasted as it's awful, it's boring, it's derivative, it's the sets are incredibly phony.
I love the sets though. I love the visual aesthetic of this movie in that it is no shot has more things in it than it needs to have. It's not quite minimalistic, but there's something just straightforward about everything you're looking at in Krull. Yeah. And like the sets they invent have got some nice use of negative space to them, really good use of scale. Yes. They're filming in, I think the end credits pointed to Italy. This landscapes are gorgeous. Like there are really breathtaking shots in this movie. Krull is pretty.
Yeah, it's one that, despite the initial critical response, looking back, it has gained a cult following. It has been referenced a bunch in pop culture. I was looking at their Wikipedia page. There's a reference to it in American Dad. There's
the gold standard. You gotta be special to get an American Dad.
There's all sorts of stuff here. There's a like they list stuff like there's a weapon that looks like it in World of Warcraft. There's in the 2008 Family Guy episode, Baby Not on Board, Carl tells Chris that he should not watch Krull after Chris expresses his view that the Eagles are a major plot hole in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. There's that stuff. Apparently, in Ready Player One, the 2018 film, the
Glaive.
The glaive that he is used in that film to cut off a certain character's arm. In that, like, it has this like cult
right
pop culture following in there that I think is fascinating. And even though like the initial responses were like, it's boring, it's derivative, the sets are awful, it's fun, like it's I was actually kind of perked up at this, of just being like, this is kind of wacky enough and like dumb enough, and like man, I had a good time watching this is the thing. So I would actually recommend it.
I do too. When I finished the movie, I rented it on Apple TV Plus, and then it's telling you the stats, and one of them is a 30% Rotten Tomatoes score. And I'm like, from when? Says who?
When
like, there's something.
When was the last new
yes.
like review on Krull?
You can say it's derivative. I can see it's a melting pot of different things, but it doesn't feel exactly like any of those other things. Yes, and there's something really on rails and straightforward about it, where there's not a lot of foreshadowing or anything going on. The plot is not complex. Like, you don't hear about characters before they're introduced. Characters literally just land in the scene, and then they're part of the traveling party. So like every scene feels really in the moment. There's not a lot of plot threads or anything you have to track. Like, you really understand exactly what is happening at all times. There's no great mystery or looming threat that you have to think about that's coming on later in the movie. No, you just focus on where you are right now. There's something like mindful and meditative. Krull feels weirdly peaceful in a way I haven't seen in a movie.
It's an odd way to describe that, considering it's about alien invaders and them trying to go like save the princess and destroy their later.
But it's going about it in such a familiar, standard way, not in a way that feels generic, that just sort of feels, it's like routine in a comforting way, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like checking out and just very carefully, mindfully washing dishes or something. You know, I feel like I'm doing like sand art. I'm like drawing with like the little wooden rake in a bonsai garden when I watch Krull.
It feels like a D&D campaign, like some tabletop RPG campaign with you and your friends, but one that is straightforward. It's still fun. Yeah. It still finds the silliness in all of that, but it's straightforward, of just like, okay, this happened. Your end goal is to go save the princess and destroy the bad guy. And it's like, okay, well, I need a party. Like, let me go like get the magic weapon. Let me go get the band of misfits that help me along the way, and then we'll go defeat them, right? And that's it. So plot wise, it is so Krull is a planet, and that planet is about to be invaded by a species of aliens called the Slayers, at least to the people on that planet. And they come, and they are, it's strange. They say they're destroying things. Their goal is to like enslave the planet, but what's really happening is their cave, their spaceship looks like a giant mountain. It's this big like rock formation, and it is like teleporting from place to place, so it's never in the same spot twice. But yeah, they are going around pillaging. I thought the alien design looked kind of neat, actually. And they interrupt a political marriage of Prince Colwyn and Princess Lyssa. Yeah.
Yes. I do want to stop you and say this is not purely political. Like, this young prince and princess from two different kingdoms genuinely love each other. This was the one really interesting like twist or like deconstructive element in this movie that wasn't something standard and routine. Because normally you would expect, Father, I don't want to marry that prince just so you can secure a land deal. I want to marry who I love. Instead, you have this prince and this princess from these two kingdoms who genuinely love each other. They're like, we want to get married because we love each other and because we do see that this would have some benefit to the land if our two kingdoms were united. And it's their dads that hate each other. Like, yeah, the boy's fine, but his dad's a jerk and I don't want to work with him. I don't want our kingdoms to be one kingdom now. Gross.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that, that this is a like willing, loving marriage between these two young people.
Yeah. And so right as they are saying their vows, enter the slayers. They come, they attack, they start shooting things. It's kind of odd that they're having the wedding right in the middle of this invasion and don't have any defenses up, because they just waltz right in and it's immediately chaos. There's a big sword fight and basically everyone dies. The princess gets captured and kidnapped, and Prince Colwyn is basically the only survivor. He wakes up that next day. There's the old wizard who seems to be the like old man Ben Kenobi stand-in.
Yes,
and he's like, you need to find the king's glaive, this magical weapon.
Yes,
that has the power to defeat them. And so he sends him off to go get that weapon. And then afterwards, as he's making his way to the alien ship, he is put upon by a group of bandits, including a young Liam Neeson in this.
And a young Robbie Coltrane. When I Googled this movie last week and I saw him, that was another reason why I wanted to pick it. I miss him.
Exactly. And like, yeah, real young versions of these actors. It's great. And the prince convinces them to be his army. And then they go off again, continuing to adventure to find this alien spaceship and save the princess and defeat the beast, which is the leader of the slayers. Mm-hmm. And they meet another wizard along the way. They meet a cyclops. They find some horses that can walk in the sky on
Clydesdales.
Fire. Yeah.
They're called fire mares, and they can run like 1,000 leagues in one day, which if you hopped on a horse that went that fast, that seems bad for you, the rider. I think you'd experience some sort of trauma from that. Probably. I don't know if a body is supposed to go that fast, not contained in a vehicle of some kind, just on the back of a horse. But these horses that they Photoshop, like they just rotoscope over with fire effects. They are Clydesdales, the Budweiser beer horses, a St. Louis icon. Always happy to see a Clydesdale. It fills me with civic pride.
Good stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of the plot of this film. It's fairly straightforward. But yeah, there's some interesting set design in there, especially when you get to the scenes with the princess inside the ship and what the inside of that ship looks like. It's just interesting. It's not, like I said, it's not necessarily well crafted. Like you can see, it's like, oh, this is just some weird set that they made, and you can see the like paint marks and where it's like bolted together and stuff like that. But that's kind of what makes it fun and cheesy. It's interesting. And then you also have some genuinely beautiful landscape photography that is breathtaking. And
I love how much time they spend in the landscape. Like Prince Colwyn has to climb up the mountain to get the glaive. There's a lot of long shots of him just climbing. Like they don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's not a hurried pace in this movie. And I really like that. It's never too slow either. I felt like it took an appropriate amount of time for everything to happen. And I really appreciated that. There's some breathing room here.
Exactly. Yeah, we get a good mix of stuff for sure. So yeah, I recommend checking it out. It's an interesting one, to say the least. have fun with it.
Please do.
Yeah, it's good.
Seek out Krull. Show Krull to a young one. I believe that, if your kid can take a weird practical effects Cyclops or some sort of Spider Woman, show it to the young person in your life. I think they could have a lot of fun with Krull. It's a good fantasy adventure, very swashbuckly.
There you go. Indeed. With that, we will take a quick break for some housekeeping, and when we come back, we will get a little bit more into spoilers and start breaking the film down a little bit. So we will be right back. Here at the Whatnauts, we make multiple different shows, and a lot of hard work goes into making them, so we would love it if you check them all out. If you enjoy our shows, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is the best place to show your support. For just $1 a month, you can get early access to episodes, and at our $3 tier, a Patreon exclusive podcast, The Pilots Club. You can even get a shout out and thank you on most of our shows at the $5 tier. And if you're one of our patrons already, thank you so much. It means the world to us. You can find out more information on our website, thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in The Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. You can also find us on YouTube and Twitch for video versions of the shows, trailer reactions, and live streams. And lastly, we have merch. If you want to grab yourself a shirt or a hoodie or a mug or something else, head over to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. All right. We are back. Once again, a big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We thank you a lot. We love you.
Thank you.
It means a ton. For the Patreon supporters at the $3 tier this month on the Pilots Club, we are talking about Cheers, the pilot of Cheers, which was surprisingly good. I wasn't expecting it to hold up as well as it did. Yeah, fantastic stuff. So go check that out. And if you want a little bit more sitcom goodness, right here on the review show, we just recovered season 2 of The Good Place. So that is our end of the month specials that we've been covering from month to month. So we will continue on with season 3 at the end of this month here, and season 4 at the end of next month. So yeah. Good stuff with all of that. We've not we've done some sitcom specials, some sitcom exchanges here on the review show, but we've never truly actually covered a sitcom on the show here. So the good place is, I think, a good place to start. So let's see other things happening over on the Captain's Log. We had Ignacio join us this past week for a lot of fun. We did some Summer Game Fest 2023 predictions. If you're a video game fan, E3 is typically the summer Super Bowl event of video games, but E3 is dead. E3 is no longer a thing. And Jeff Keighley has kind of taken over with Summer Game Fest. There's a number of conferences and showcases and new trailers and new announcements and all that stuff. So we employed Melissa's skills as a Magic 8-Ball, and we made some predictions, and she gave us the yes or no, this will happen, or right, this won't happen. And you also had a real Magic 8-Ball. You were competing against a real Magic 8-Ball.
So you're gonna have to tell me at the end of the Games Fest or whatever whether me or this plastic product from Mattel was able to blindly guess more correctly. Exactly. So that was a lot of fun. Go check that out. That's over on the Captain's Log. And then last but not least, over on the Reactor Core, we have our reactions to the season 2 finale of Yellow Jackets out. Yeah.
Man, that was a lot of fun for sure. I love that show a lot. Please go check that out. And then coming up in the near future here, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I think we'll be recording that tomorrow night if everything goes according to plan. So be on the lookout for that down the road. I watched it Thursday night. It was great. I loved it. But that's about it for housekeeping. right now. So let's get on to spoilers for Krull. Okay, spoilers for Krull. Here we are. Melissa, where do you want to start with this one?
I want to start right at the beginning. Well, the actual beginning of the movie is when you see the big villain of this piece is named the Beast, where you see the Beast's ship traveling through space to the planet Krull, an exact Star Wars shot.
Yes,
and I love that you watch. You watch this long spaceship travel. The camera follows the whole length of it, and after that, it's like visual effects by like they dropped it right at the moment. Like you look at that visual effect, isn't that cool? Well, this is who made it, huh?
Yeah. They had a mix of visual effects of like the quality of them. There was some that was like, this looks bad. This looks so bad. But there's some that was like, this looked good. Like this is awesome. This is cool.
I think everything looks. I mean, this movie is from like 1983. Like it looks like a movie from 1983 should look. Like I didn't expect better from it. And I think there's a very charming sort of lo-fi analog quality to everything that you're looking at. These are fun to look at. Now the movies don't look like them anymore. But the first real character that we meet is Princess Lyssa, and she's got this beautiful dress. She's looking out on the vistas of Krull from this really cool looking palace. And like her dad comes up to her saying that Prince Colwyn and his father and all their knights are on the way, and he's still trying to convince her, like, are you sure you want to marry him? Like, there are like other boys you can marry. And she's like, no, I choose him. He is my choice. We chose each other. And that immediately was not what I was expecting. I think that is very rare to have the overlap between the political marriage and the marriage for romance. That is never the same person.
Yeah. Yes.
So I appreciated that rarity. And I appreciate that, again, this was her choice. It was the choice of both of them. Like, you don't get that as often. You'll get like the classic fairy tale, I have to marry the Grand Vizier or whatever. But really, it's like this one lowly street rat who I truly want to marry. I like that she wants to marry the prince romantically and as a political move, and that it's the dads who are fighting with each other and don't, like, they're not enemy kingdoms. I think the kingdoms are neighbors. Kingdoms are largely friends. I think the two dads specifically hate each other, and I think that's a very fun dynamic. I really wish we spent a little bit more time with these merging families at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, what was interesting to me about that whole situation is they know they are about to be invaded, that the aliens are either coming or have already landed, and like their soldiers are on the way. Like they know that this is the situation, and the political marriage is to have an army strong enough and united enough to be a formidable force against these invaders. And I don't think I would go as far to say that the dads hated each other. I got the vibe that they were just annoyed by one another. Like that was
perhaps that is closer to it. Like they're not enemies. They're just like
it was mows his lawn at like 7 a.m. on Thursday. Like, God, trying to sleep. Like, why? Right?
Yes, it's just petty grievances between the two dads. And they're like, these petty grievances are more important to me than my child marrying who they love. Can I convince them to marry somebody else?
Of our planet, right?
Well, both dads die immediately in the attack anyway, so who cares? But I like that when finally everybody arrives, Prince Colwyn and Princess Lyssa must have met before, even if they were younger, maybe they had their eyes on each other from when they were 10 or whatever. But he arrives and he just silently walks up to her, and she just looks him up and down and says, I chose well. And he says, so did I. And like, then they embrace and they kiss. I liked that moment. I like that they really seem like equals to each other. And over the course of the story, like, Lyssa gets captured. She doesn't have any warrior capabilities. She doesn't fight her way out. She's out of the story. So like narratively, they aren't on the same level as each other, but within their own relationship, they seem like true partners. I like that he's like, I will walk up silently. I would, judge me. It's me, your future husband. Am I still good? What do you think? It's right, Bumble. Yeah. Ladies, make the first move.
Yeah.
I like the dynamic between the two of them. I think it's very sweet. Like we do not spend a lot of time on this romance at all, but what is there, I did find charming.
Yeah. And I think on top of that, even though she doesn't really have much agency throughout most of the film, it is their relationship at the end that is what enables them to defeat the beast, right? Because he does the like Luke Skywalker upside down trying to like get his lightsaber to come back to him, and he can't. And like that is the thing, like he does not have the like it's obvious that he has some kind of magical power, like the thing is moving, but he can't actually make it come to him unless she is there with him and they do it together, which I thought was an interesting twist. Like it's not that he can go out, swashbuckling on all these adventures by himself. Like he needs her there to give him these even better magical powers.
Yeah. And her dad is trying to talk her out of marrying him. And he's like, well, if he's this great warrior you admire, what are you going to do when he like goes away on battle and leaves you for months? And she's like, I know who I'm marrying. I know who he is and what he does. I admire him for that. I accept that. She's like, she isn't going to try and change him into anybody he isn't. Like she accepts him, like ultimately, like you are brave, you are strong, you help people, and I understand that means we can't always be together. That's okay. I agree to this. Like when she gets captured, she's pretty much
I'll tag along, and I know what I'm getting into if I tag along.
Yeah. When she gets captured, she's pretty much a damsel in distress, but she has this really unique agency in choosing the right partner for herself romantically and the right partner for the kingdom, all together, like merging these two lands. Like that's a lot more than I expected. And I'm like, I don't care if she just sort of aimlessly wanders around the beast castle and doesn't try to get herself out. Like the interpersonal agency she has over her private life, I was really happy to see that happened. That was the more unique, special thing to me.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so they're trying to have this marriage ceremony literally right as they're getting attacked. Like they're watching men. I'd have been like, but sir, they're like right out there. Like, why don't we go fight them and you do the marriage later? Or
we got to do the fire hand thing.
Yeah, it has to happen now. Because otherwise the armies won't listen to the other command. It doesn't really make sense, but that I think is kind of the metaphor for the whole movie. Is like some of it doesn't really make, like if you really scrutinize it, like there's some things in there that's just like, this makes no sense. But it's kind of fun because of that. It's like, why would you have a wedding right now? What is wrong with you all?
It's like fantasy fairy tale logic. Like the movie really seems to know what it is, and it is way farther on the fantasy edge than it is on the sci-fi edge. Like you keep describing these guys as aliens, and if it wasn't for the shot at the beginning where we have the Star Wars shot of the spaceship coming to the planet Krull, you wouldn't know and you wouldn't care. Like that's really the only sci-fi flavor that's in this, and that the glaive is clearly supposed to be, we have our own lightsaber. Kenner, make toys of this. It's fairy tales. I really like that about it.
Yeah. And I started to mention the design of the creatures. It's not really that you see a creature per se, because they are in armor, and it's humanoid. Like it's a humanoid design. And when you kill one of the slayers, there is this like smaller thing that like shrivels out of it. It's almost the trope of the like little small guy controlling the like big alien robot thing, right? It's almost that, which I kind of liked. I thought that was neat. But even the design of their like humanoid armor also fits what you said, that like band t-shirt, heavy metal, like that's the, like it has this like it looks cool actually. Like I was like I kind of like these. They're imposing, they're menacing. They unfortunately also kind of had the like Batman problem where they can't move their necks, and so they have to turn. They're just real clunky as they have to like move their whole body back and forth there. I wish that it could somehow move a little bit freer and they were a little quicker on that. Because yeah, like I said, just like the look of them is imposing. And then you see them move and you're just like, oh, they're like waddling around. Like they can't do anything. And then on the flip side, the design of the like knights that are in the castle there, I thought those also looked interesting. Again, I'm not sure exactly how practical all of that stuff was, but I like that part really felt like Dune to me. Like it's not the Star Wars knockoff. It's not the something like that part. Like like the sci-fi design of these things feel more like Dune. Like that almost felt more futuristic than some of the stuff in Dune itself. The old one, not the new one now. But yeah, it was just like I would have liked to see more of it. They're also in a castle, so things aren't lit super well. The wedding and the invasion was happening at night. So you don't truly get to see them all that much. But I just thought it was neat. Like right away, it's like, oh, it's this like fantasy setting, but we got these sci-fi aliens and sci-fi looking knights. Like that's kind of cool. I don't mind that at all. And I'm for longtime listeners of the show, you guys know I'm not a big fantasy.
You aren't,
fan. Not that I think it's bad or anything. It just doesn't speak to me as much as like sci-fi does.
One time when we over our winter break for the first episode of the year, where we take a couple weeks off, we've got more time to watch something. We usually watch an entire film franchise. And a couple times I've pitched the Lord of the Rings trilogy to you, and you've been like, I don't think I'd have anything to say. No strong feelings in any direction about Lord of the Rings. Fine. So the fact that you're like,
movies, but sure.
The fact that you couldn't fill like 50 minutes finding anything in all like 10 hours of those movies to talk about. But this year you're like, we're going to talk about 3 sword sorcery things. Like you are diving in.
Like I certainly could find stuff to talk about with Lord of the Rings. There is a lot in that. And even in the amount that they give you, there's so much more in the books that like didn't make it in, right? Like but it's not my preferred genre. That's fine.
Yeah, but you have such a strong sci-fi identity. Like you're one of the most sci-fi people I have ever met. Like down to your bones. You get down to your bones and your bones are just
down
lasers.
to my circuits.
Exactly. My favorite design element in this movie was the Beast's castle, which whenever I say it, it feels like I'm talking about Beauty and the Beast. But that is the name of this villain. He's called the Beast. And he's got this weird fortress that looks like a mountain. Like it looks like a giant rock hurtling through space that then just like lands somewhere organically. Like you wouldn't know it wasn't a mountain if they didn't tell you.
Yeah.
The inside of it feels so biological. Like we see Princess Lyssa trapped in something that looks like an eye. And at the end of the movie, I still wasn't clear on whether that is a real physical structure within the fortress somewhere, or if it's sort of a metaphorical, like, yes, she is within the eye, she is under the control of the beast. Like, right, I don't know.
Is this like a Sauron's eye metaphor? Yeah. Like, does the beast have his eye on her?
Yes.
And that's what,
like she's in, it's not like a rotoscope effect. Like she's clearly walking around some sort of
Lord of the Rings references and stuff
like that.
You know
there's a big eye. Good job.
I've read all the books.
It's clear that she's in a physical structure, but I wasn't sure if that physical structure was meant to represent a real physical structure or represent something metaphorical and abstract. But the tunnels throughout this fortress look more like an ear or something. It's all sort of like pale and smooth with like little turns and pockets and things. It looked like you're inside an ear or inside a seashell or something.
Sure.
It's
I was going to say it's interesting because Star Wars had a look that worked so well with the sleek whites and the blacks and the grays and the red. Like there's something about that even looking at those original movies today, they still look so great. And this is like, I'm not trying to say that this looks bad. It doesn't look great, but it's such a unique identity and a different take on that this like almost organic or some like just the way that their hallways work and can split apart and do all sorts of stuff was just like, what are they actually trying to like? I was kind of confused, but it's interesting to say the least. Like I'm still thinking about it, just trying to understand it. Whereas Star Wars, I see it and I understand it, and that's kind of it. Just not a bad thing, but it like there's just not much to say on that. It is what it is, and you can be like, oh, the oppressive nature of all the blacks and stuff in the Death Star. Does that? Sure. I just have no idea what this is. Like, what is the inside of the ship? Is it an ear canal? Is it some like blood vein? Like, is the ship living somehow? Like, are they inside a living being? I don't know.
It's odd, but it's not overcomplicated. Nothing in this movie is so remarkably weird. Nothing really sticks out to you. I feel like the design and the aesthetics of the whole thing is pretty consistent and pretty specific. Like, it doesn't look Star Wars, and it also doesn't look like classic medieval fantasy castle. It's something else. But the something else that it is, even if I have trouble defining it, it has a recognizable, consistent look throughout the whole movie that I appreciate. Right. I think it's the meaning of it is, I don't know if I quite get it, but visually it reads like really purposeful and really clean. And like I said, there's a lot of negative space in the settings and in how the movie is shot that I appreciate it.
Yeah, like it almost has a ethereal quality in this like it's almost dreamlike when the princess is running around in there, because you can't quite tell what it is or where she is or stuff like that. There's no windows where you can see trees on the outside. It's just this to us, it's this completely foreign place. And that I think is what makes it kind of cool, and it's sci-fi, it's dreamlike. You're unsure. There's great negative space in this, and just interesting design. Like, there's a lot of pictures of the princess in this space where it's like, oh, if this movie came out today, like that would be one of the pictures that everyone used on their like trailer reaction like thing, because it had her on one side, there's negative space on the other where you can put all of this stuff. Like it's exactly what you would need for all of that stuff. But like, despite that, like the composition of a lot of that stuff was interesting to say the least. Right. So I think it was successful in making something that was just different.
This is unexpectedly a real every frame a painting kind of movie. I really liked how this thing looked. And outside of the built structures, they find really incredible landscapes. Like, I didn't know Italy looked like this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
He goes up into these like real rocky, craggy mountains, and there's like far away and long shots. So like you get the scale and you get the distance and just the time of him climbing up there. Or you're in these really interesting like quicksand swamps. They find cool rock features. They find beautiful fields.
Yeah. I think all of the shots of those mountains and the mountain peaks and all of that stuff was one of my favorite parts of this movie. Because it looks beautiful. It's great. And like, what I think is unfortunate about that on the flip side is that some of the production design is so cheap in comparison that seeing him kind of scurry around the mountains in this outfit and these like prop swords and is just kind of silly. But also like I like it. Like I want more of that in the movie.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that the swamp was actually a set that they made.
Yeah. But it looks...
but still, like, it looks great.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking about just natural spaces that are not obviously buildings, whether they found them out in Italy or they built them. Yeah. 80s had a lot of quicksand. Like there's the Swamps of Sadness from the Neverending Story. There's the Snow Sand from the Princess Bride.
This is why we grew up thinking that quicksand would be a real problem in our everyday lives.
Right. You're going to lose your horse. You're going to lose Artax out there.
Exactly. Yeah, no. So one of the this is what I think is also so interesting about this movie is the mix of the quality of the effects, right? You have these beautiful, breathtaking mountains, and then when you skip ahead to the scene when they get the horses and they're riding on them, just so obviously green screened and green screened poorly. And then they do the things where they like go off, like it's the horses in the sky, like all of that, and it looks so bad. And it's just again, like, this is amazing.
How good could it have looked at the time? Like, one of the reasons why Star Wars is so big is because those effects are so above and beyond well crafted. Like, you can't look back at movies at this era and say, well, it doesn't look as good as Star Wars. Like, Star Wars is the platinum standard. You can't hold everything to a platinum standard. Most things looked just like Krull.
I think what got me is that they like the scenes of them just on the horses on the path were also green screened. Like, it felt like they didn't need to green screen those. I guess they didn't. Did they maybe not have enough money for like a dolly shot that they could like move the camera like as at the same speed as these horses to get this shot? Could they not film that on the like? Who knows? But it just seemed like what you could have gotten that shot somehow, and maybe they want it to be a smoother shot or something. Who knows? But it was just
when you look at behind the scenes stuff,
interesting choice,
not just of movies from any era. So frequently, it's like there was unnatural, unseasonable weather. It rained. There was a heat wave. Like, there's 1,000 things that can stand in the way of.
They didn't want to clear away, like the work to go into that. Yeah, like that makes sense. It stands out as such an odd it's an odd choice, but we don't know exactly what went into them making that choice, that decision there. But it stood out so much to me. It was like, this is so obviously fake, and there has to have been some way that they could have they had the technology back then somehow, but I don't know.
We weren't there.
I don't know.
We weren't in Italy in 1982.
Exactly.
One of my other favorite set pieces is when the Obi-Wan Kenobi character, I remember most of their names, I don't think I have his, but he has to go see the widow of the web, and he has to traverse through this spider web, that they made practically with like these long strands of sort of like silky, shimmery, weird fabric. But of course, a spider sits at the center of the web and feels like the vibrations when like other insects step onto the web. So there's this really cool auditory special effect where when he's walking along it looks like a ropes course, but it's a spider web. There's all these bells in the soundtrack. Like every time he takes a step or touches one of them, you hear bells. I thought that was really cool. That
his name is Ynir, Ynir,
right. Everybody's got interesting names in this.
They often refer to him as the Ancient One, right?
There's many jokes about how they keep talking about how he's old, and he's like, I'm not that old. I was young once. I was you.
He's referred to as the Ancient One, but he's not even the oldest person in the like. There's another magical wizard that they go see who is like,
that's the Ancient One.
Yeah, he has much more like visibly aged than this other guy. He's like, I'm still spry. I can do this. Like, I'm the one that started the king out on the quest. Like, it happened because of me. I'm not sitting in some cave somewhere. I got out.
That is another Star Wars thing where there's not just a man who is old, but old is part of his name and identity. He's the old Ben Kenobi. Truly. Not just the Obi-Wan Kenobi, the old Ben Kenobi of this movie. And he has to go to see the widow of the web. And you find out, like at the beginning of the movie, when he's trying to help Colwyn, he mentions like, I also had a love of my life when I was your age. I lost her. I'm going to make sure you don't lose yours. And he goes to the widow of the web, and you learn that this was his bride. They were in a very similar situation to Colwyn and Lyssa. And in fact, her name is Lyssa. And for a second, I was wondering if there was some sort of a time loop thing going on or an alternate realities. But it seems like it's more of a Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice thing. Like, oh, your mom is the same name as my mom. That makes me more likely to help you. Now it's like, oh, you were marrying Alyssa? I married Alyssa once. I now feel extra protective of your Lyssa because I lost mine.
Yeah, so there is a prophecy. The fifth film, as you watch this spaceship land on Krull, Ynir, who's also the narrator of the film here, is mentioning that there is a prophecy, which is why they are kind of expecting the Slayers to come, or they're not surprised that they have come. Like, oh no, what are we gonna do? There's aliens. Aliens exist. Oh my god! Like, like they knew this stuff was coming, and there's a prophecy that tells of a princess that has an ancient name, and and that she will like find true love, and that love will be there's something like that. But it's this ancient name, and we get this backstory that Ynir was in love with this woman who had that same name. And I thought the exact same thing. I was like, is Ynir actually Prince Colwyn when he's older? Like, what's going on here? Because if her name was the same and they love each other, like, but no, that was not the case. And then, my mind also exactly went to, okay, so it's more of a Batman v Superman situation. It's a Martha situation here. And that's exactly it. Like, he goes to her because she has enough magical powers to like help protect them or just help give them an extra edge in their fight against the beast. And because he knows the lady on the web, that's what they call her,
the widow in the web, widow of the web.
It's a like Arthurian, it is the lady of the lake kind of thing, right? But they go to her, and because he knows her name, he's like, look, you're still the one that I truly love. Unfortunately, you've been cursed to be here at like all of this time, so there's nothing I can really do about this right now. But
the backstory is that they were in the same situation. She was a princess. He was this warrior king, and he would go off on all these long battles, and she didn't accept it the same way that our Lyssa does for Colwyn. She was angry when he would go away, and he left once on this long journey without knowing he had gotten her pregnant. And then when the baby was born, she was so angry that he was gone, that he was absent, he was unreachable, that she killed the baby the day it was born. And she's like, because of that, I am cursed, and now I live in the middle of the spider web. And like, that's the one thing that might be a little bit too intense for a little kid. Just that one line where she's like, I killed our son the day I gave birth to him. But other than that, it was like
scene in general. I know, like, there's some like I don't like spiders. I think if there's one in my house, I should burn the entire house down and move to a different country. But I know that there are people that like have a visual fear of them, and so just to see this giant spider is probably going to be an intense scene for some.
I was a kid who wasn't really afraid of many things like in movies, so like that's the mindset I'm in when I look at modern things. Like if there's a detail that's too sad, that might have bugged me more than like, oh, a monster, a spider, a cyclops.
I will say though, this spider looks neat. I feel like it's made out of glass, like it's a glass spider, because you can like see through it and into it, but it is also like it is the like security system for this web, right? Like it does the thing as spiders do. If something touches the web, it knows exactly where it is. So as he's like crawling along these steel cables that are supposed to be the web, like this giant spider, and however they animated it and made it work, looked incredible. Like one of the best effects in the film, period. But yeah, it just looked neat, and the whole situation resolves with her with the widow in the web being like, I have this magical sand in this hourglass. If you take this sand, like it will keep the spider away from you. It'll end my life, but it will give them my magical powers. But if you hold the sand, once the sand runs out, your life will also die.
It's interesting that the spider's like a security feature, but it doesn't seem like she controls it. Like the spider is almost to like keep outsiders from coming in and to keep her from going out. Like they seem like separate forces. Like the spider is not a familiar to her. She can't do anything about it. So she's like, the sand will protect you somehow, but it will kill you as soon as the sand runs out of your hand. It'll also kill me. I don't know why the sand has to kill two people.
Yeah. Something else in that scene that I thought was fantastic, and they made it work, is that the widow in the web is an older woman. She has like wrinkly skin, all that stuff. And then there's a scene
old
where
lady
she
stuff.
Just typical grandma aesthetic, right? And she she's looking in the mirror, and they're having a conversation where like she is like, I recognize that I'm older, I'm unlovable, like you might not recognize me. And he's just like, no, like I still see you exactly the way I saw you. And her appearance in the mirror changes to her younger self. And I thought that looked fantastic. And then it was nice. It does the thing where like the older version turns and the younger version stays, like where you would typically see in like a horror film, right? Where it's like, oh, it's spooky, like something. And it's not scary in this situation. It is magical. It is like something is happening here that's interesting, but you get a real good look at her face, and it just the whole thing looked great, because they had to have had like two actors doing the same thing at the same time somehow to like mirror all of this stuff, and they nailed it. They made it work so good. Yeah, I just like there's certain things in here that I'm just like, how did they make that happen? And then there's certain things where it's like the green screen horses where I'm just like, oh god. It's so funny.
What did you think of the Cyclops?
The Cyclops was, I think, my favorite bit of this whole
movie.
Looks
great.
I think it looks great. I thought what was interesting is that the single eye of the Cyclops does blink at certain times.
But only sometimes. It doesn't blink at a normal human rate.
Right. And it didn't, at least to me, it didn't feel like it was animation. Right. Like I feel like if you go back to like a film adaptation of like The Odyssey or something like that, and you see the Cyclops, you might get like a claymation or like some animation effect on top of it. I don't know how they did the blinking. You don't see it enough, but I was just like, it looks good.
I'd have to go back and watch it again. I think it's like a prosthetic or mask or some sort of effect like that for wide shots, but they probably have an animatronic element that maybe was too heavy to like wear around in wide shots. They only use it like in close-ups, like only in close-ups it can blink when you're just doing an insert shot. I don't know. I'd have to see it again.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention enough to decipher it, but I thought that looked fantastic. I do think that because of the prosthetic on the guy's, I don't think he could see, period.
Yeah,
I think he was doing all of those scenes blind. Because like there's a couple instances of them like shaking hands, and it's kind of obvious that like when another character holds up their hand first, either he hesitates or misses, and then they reach down to like go get it. So it feel like he's not a character that is like he's not moving around all that much. He's much more stoic. He's much more just an imposing presence for whatever threat they come upon. He does have some action scenes, but he's always by himself. So there's no one around to get hit when he swings and hit things, right? But my favorite part of all of that was their backstory.
Yes.
Why Cyclops exist in this world. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
Also kind of makes no sense when you really scrutinize it, but it was still just like, I loved it. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah, there's people who like wanted to see the future, and so they had to give up one of their eyes to do it. It's like you can see the future, but you only have one eye now, and you see the day when you die.
So here's what happened. They are another alien species. They are a humanoid alien species, and the Slayers came and enslaved their planet. And so I mean, you know, they've colonized might not be the right word, but they've spread throughout the galaxy. But they then made a deal with the Slayers. If I read this correctly, they made a deal with the Slayers we will give up one of our eyes if you give us the ability to see the future. And the Slayers said yes, but the future that they see is their own death. So it's not that they can do both. They can only see their own death. So it is this like tragic, you got what you wanted, but it's not what you wanted. Yeah. But also the deal doesn't really make sense with what we know about the Slayers who come to destroy and enslave. So then if they've enslaved this planet, like it was part of the deal that they're no longer in slavery, that they could then go out to other planets? Because it's just unclear. There's some cloudiness in there still. But I loved it. I was like, that's so cool.
I did get the impression that there was a lot more to this. Like maybe this was a bigger script that got cut down, or maybe there's like a tie-in novelization and there's more details in Krull, the novelization, or they were going to make more Krulls. or a
Where did I
tabletop
see that?
game. Who knows? It feels like there could be a lot more to do in Krull. But I love the Cyclops' design. He looks really serious and like really sad, but also very gentle. He's a real sweetheart character. And I like that first off, we got to talk about Ergo and how Ergo just literally lands in the scene and just starts making noise. And I'm like, who is this guy? Am I supposed to know him?
Quickly here?
Yeah.
So you mentioned a novelization. There is a novelization that's out there. There's also a comic book adaptation that was published by Marvel Comics in Marvel Super Special number 28 with some behind the scenes material of the film.
Okay.
And it was also published as a 2-issue limited series. But the adaptation was written by David Michelin, with art by Brett Blevins and Vince Coletta. David Michelin is a review show alum. He's the co-creator of Venom.
Oh!
Yeah. Which we did the original Venom like solo series,
Lethal Protector.
Protector here on this show. Yeah. So wild stuff.
Nice.
Sorry. Now you can continue.
But yeah, Ergo just falls into the scene, like some like potion or like some spell that went wrong landed him there, and then he just follows them. Like they just adopt him. Like they do not know Ergo. Ergo doesn't know them. I love that structure where everyone you encounter just becomes part of the traveling party, unquestionably. It's like you're all in the family now. Here's your corona.
Right.
Ergo the Magnificent. Short in stature, tall in power, narrow in purpose, wide in vision. Like he has a whole introduction spiel he gives for people. He was trying to literally pick a pie cooling off a windowsill. He's up to old time hobo antics. And I think whoever it is like kicked him out, and then he lands in the swamp, and then he follows Colwyn and Ynir around. And when they go to see like the old seer guy, and he has this like 10-year-old boy apprentice, and Ergo immediately goes up to the boy after we've already seen that he's got a sweet tooth. He was trying to catch why do I keep trying to say catch a pie? It's not alive. He's trying to nab it, trying to yank a pie.
Mean, we haven't seen a pie on the planet of Krull. It could be something
pie
you
is
have
a
to
species.
Right.
Like when he's sifting through all his papers trying to find a spell, he's like, no, that's a hot fudge recipe. So he goes up to the little boy like, do you have candy? Kids always have candy. And the kid's like, no, I don't have any candy.
Cinnamon roll, but that's it. It's like, that'll
right. It's like some sort of weird cinnamon stick candy. And he's like, okay, I'll take that.
What's great is he snaps off a small bit to hand that to him, and he grabs the bigger bit and eats that instead.
Ergo.
And he says, share and share alike.
I like that that's the initiation point, that Ergo just has a sweet tooth and is like, I want candy. A kid probably is candy. But then also you can imagine that Ergo, being this short, like kind of misfit in the group, might look at the kid and say, you and I are closer to being on each other's levels than I am with anybody else here. It's like he kind of just befriends the kid. Yeah. And I like that I like how the relationship develops over the course of the movie. Like they're just traveling, they're walking through a forest, and they're like, oh, if I could have one wish right now, I'd like to have this thing. And they all go around and say what they would wish for. And the little boy wishes for a puppy. And Ergo's like, this is one omnipotent wish that could be anything. You don't want 1,000 puppies? But he's like, no, I just want one. And then later, Ergo has this ability where he can transform into animals, always off screen, and then the real animal just comes walking on.
There is one
very charming
on screen.
Oh my God, no, that's right. Yeah, he does it.
Right,
he does transform into a goose. Those are very fun. I love old timey transformation magic.
Take that, American Werewolf in London.
But yeah, he transforms into a puppy for the little boy. He turns into a little basset hound who the boy can carry around for a little while. Like, that's really sweet that he took this just sort of like killing time on the road game everybody is playing. And the boy happens to wish for something logical, even when Ergo tries to talk him out of it. And then Ergo's like, wait a minute, I can do that. I can make this boy's wish come true. He can have a puppy for a couple hours. And then when the old seer dies, Ergo just sort of reaches out and like puts his hand on the boy's shoulder, like quietly, silently, I've got you now. You're with Ergo. Ergo can barely do anything, but Ergo's got your back.
Yep.
And when you first see the Cyclops sort of lurking out in the woods, not doing anything, he's just out there. And Ergo's like, I saw this terrible creature, the Cyclops. It's awful. And the Cyclops keeps following them around and like trying to befriend Ergo. Like he can see that is part of his future vision. Like me and this guy are going to be friends. We haven't been friends yet, but if I am seeing it, it must be destined. So I'll just follow him around and eventually the guy will warm up to me. And to watch that happen and watch Ergo and the Cyclops befriend each other is really sweet. There's nice little character moments throughout the movie.
The Cyclops meeting Ergo is that he immediately knows. He goes, oh, you're Ergo the Magnificent.
Right,
like,
yes.
He just immediately knows that, which may be part of his like seeing his own death. He knows that he's gonna be in their party, on this adventure. So he already kind of knows him, but still like just takes it at face value that, wow, yeah, you're magnificent.
And he's like, are you making fun of me? Is this a joke? And he's like, no, they're magnificent. I know you.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really fun stuff in this for sure.
One little bit I like is when they meet that like band of brigands. And Colwyn's trying to get them on his side because he needs an army, but he doesn't have one because all of his actual army got killed in that attack on the palace. So his plan was, all right, I got this old man. I'm going to go get the glaive. And then as I walk to where the bad guy is, I will just collect guys I see along the way. You see, they really like his optimism he goes into this mission with. I like that Prince Colwyn always has this like, he reminded me of Robin Hood, not just in like the beautiful hair and the tight pants and all that, but like he has this sort of smile to him. Like he's just sort of like, ha, I'm Prince Colwyn. Here I go. Like he's a levity to him that I think speaks to that character in some regards. And he's just like, well, just going to walk around, just going to find guys. Why wouldn't they be my friend? Why wouldn't they help me save my princess bride?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
when he meets those band of brigands, he says something like, and if you help me, you'll secure a fortune for your sons. And I was thinking it's just like old school, like patriarchal, just sort of generic speak, your sons. And then the lead guy is like, how did you know I have sons? Like he literally has sons that Prince Colwyn knows about that he is speaking to. Like, oh no, I'm not just talking about general progeny. I mean, your specific boys. If you help me out, you're going to get like riches and legacy to pass on to those boys specifically.
Yep. And that's when Liam Neeson is like, but you don't have money now. Like we need to get paid.
Right. Yeah. It was fascinating that this band of brigands like have like wives and children out there, but then they just wander around doing brigand stuff.
Just stealing, just being bandits. Right.
And Liam Neeson has like 8 wives. Like for every different region that they're in, he's got a wife there.
If you told me that outside of the context of this movie, I'd probably still believe you. Liam Neeson has 8 wives, but yeah, sure. Okay.
Oh, he's quite tall. He's a lot of man. He's got room for extra wives.
Right. Yeah.
The more inches you get over 6 feet, like you can acquire extra spouses if you want. Nobody talks about this cheat code. So we meet one of his wives when they have to camp out in an area. They're like, oh, we're starving, but like we're exhausted. We've been traveling all day. We don't have any energy to hunt. And they're like, hey, Liam Neeson, you got a wife around here? Can the wife bring us some dinner? And the wife does. And she's got like this young girl. Not by young girl, I mean like a 19-year-old girl who she like took in after like her family's house was burned down or whatever. You know, the Slayers got him or whatever. And he makes eyes that he just sort of asks about her, and the wife is like, "Oh, don't be looking at her now. I'm your wife." And he's like, "Yes, you are. Got eyes, you know, nobody but you." And it's not clear. That's not explicitly what they say, but it's a moment like that. And it's not clear if the wives know about the other wives. Like, I don't know what the situation is there. Maybe he is in a fully agreeable open marriage with all of these different women, and the women know about the other women, but they're like, "You've got 8 of us already. You don't go looking at anybody else. We are a pact of sister wives as we are." Yeah. Right. No extramarital affairs, just within the mini marital affairs. It's not clear what that situation is. But when he dies, he doesn't make it out of the end of the movie. But when he dies, he says, "Tell that woman." He doesn't say, "Tell that woman I love her." I don't remember her name. It's like Marith or something. He's like, "Tell Marith I love her," which is, it felt like it was ADR'd in later. And some of the dialogue at the beginning of the movie when Lyssa is talking to her father about how she wants to marry Colwyn, that also felt ADR'd in later. It's all voiceover.
Because it was. So the Lysette Anthony plays Lyssa, but in the it was redubbed. Her voice was redubbed by the actress Lindsay Caruso.
Oh,
the producers didn't want the princess to have such a they say they wanted the princess to have a more mature sounding voice here.
Okay.
I don't know if that meant like it was like higher pitched or mousier before, or they just didn't like the vocal performance that she had done. I'm not sure. But yeah, that was one thing I noticed early on too. I was like, is this whole thing dubbed over? Like, it was weird.
I didn't pick up on that, but I did notice how many scenes there were of like voice over, like, it didn't seem to me like they actually filmed that happening. Like, yes. You added this in post.
There's a lot of ADR. Yeah.
But what they added were these more romantic, like, character connection bits, like Lyssa talking about why she wants to marry Colwyn, and then Liam Neeson dies and he's like, "Tell my wife I love her." Like, I could tell they were afterthoughts, but I appreciated that they looked at it and they thought, this should have been here earlier. We'd better add it now. Like, the element of romance, I'm happy that they realized that they needed it, because I think it does add something special to this movie. Like, this is a very, between Liam Neeson and his wife, I don't know, we barely see them, but between Lyssa and Colwyn, it's got a little bit more to it. It's not generic. It's not fully fleshed out, but it's not generic either. And I like that they took a couple extra steps to make it a bit more fleshed out. I really appreciated it. And I looked at this movie. I thought about how I would have reacted to it if I had seen it when I was a little kid. And I think I would have really liked it. I would have found it really sweet. And I'm happy that they had that girl stuff in there, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I think this was a lot of fun. I think it is, like, it is derivative, like we've said. It's very like that opening scene, obviously Star Wars. Him going to get the Glaive is obviously Arthurian, right? The inclusion of the Cyclops, the Odyssey, right? Like, it is all of that stuff kind of mixed in, but there's so much that is mixed in that it almost feels original. Like, it doesn't.
Yes,
but there's so much mixed in there that it's like, yeah, it's not generic. Like, there is, but it is. It's somewhere stuck in this like middle ground that it's created its own thing, but it's also, it wears its influences on its sleeve, and so
it doesn't feel like a knockoff. It feels like just a really specific pastiche with a couple, can we get some of those Star Wars shine moments in it?
Right.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the combination of things that it was. Like, I like the swashbuckly action adventure. I like the big band of warriors and misfits that becomes a family. I like the romance element in there. It's the sort of fairy tale things in it. Like, and the plot, like I mentioned earlier, is very simple, straightforward. Characters arrive with no clue that they are coming. Like, we don't hear anything about Ergo or the Cyclops or the band of brigands or this old seer, whatever. Like, everybody is barely mentioned, if at all, before they arrive. So you're really just in the moment with the movie. You're not thinking about what it has set up to come later. It like sets it up as it is doing it, which is kind of refreshing because it's just not how movies work as much anymore nowadays, where there's more like there's more machinations or more lore or more Easter eggs or foreshadowing or something like that. Like, there's a really lovely simplicity to Krull.
There is. I would agree with that for sure. I don't know if I have much else to say on it, though, or much else that would just be the same things that I've been saying, just for a different scene. But yeah, I say we do our bingo check-in.
I already took a look. I only have a couple squares left, and this doesn't fit any of them.
Yeah, we don't have a
I don't think you have any either.
No, didn't realize my own strength. No cat and mouse game. No sex scene set to music. No one was arted to death. No big puddle splash. Womp, womp, womp. So yeah, not much of an update for Review Show Bingo, but it's still always fun to play and check in here. So there you go. I guess I never brought it up on screen. So let me at least bring it up on screen so you can see where we are. These are what our boards are looking like right now. If you're watching this on the YouTube version, you can check that out. But yeah, not much of an update. So bam, here we go. Okay, Melissa, let's do recommendations.
Yes.
If people enjoyed this, what else might they recommend? Or what else might they enjoy? Yeah.
Like I've been saying, I think this is way stronger on the fantasy wavelength than the sci-fi wavelength. So look at other fantasy movies from the 80s. You've got Princess Bride. You've got Neverending Story, Labyrinth, Dark Crystal. This movie made me realize I've still never seen Legend or Willow. I wish I had already seen them so that I could formally recommend them here at the end. Instead, I just recognize that those are also within the same genre and era with which we are working.
Yeah.
I'll eventually have to watch those. And then I did want to throw out one sci-fi movie from around this time. And by around this time, I mean vaguely in the 80s. Let me Google when this movie came out.
Sure. Yeah. No problem at all.
This is from 1985. This is a sci-fi movie called Enemy Mine. Have you ever heard of Enemy Mine?
I don't think so.
It's a smaller movie. I've never heard of anybody but my dad reference the movie Enemy Mine. So on the opportunity of the relative obscurity and cult interest that is Krull, I wanted to give a comparative recommendation of another smaller, odder, possibly forgotten movie of this time. Enemy Mine is a sci-fi movie where humanity and some sort of alien bug race are in this war. And Dennis Quaid's flying some sort of a fighter jet out there in space. He crash lands on this uninhabited planet with one enemy alien bug soldier. They're the only two living beings on this planet.
Okay.
Only two sentient living beings on this planet. Like the alien has more, it isn't quite as suspicious as Dennis Quaid is. Dennis Quaid hates this other alien, doesn't trust it at all, doesn't talk to it. So it's just the drama about the two of them trying to survive and then eventually realizing we have to combine forces. We are never going to survive on our own individually. But if we work together as a team, we can build shelter, we can find food, maybe we can repair one of our ships and get out of here eventually. And so it takes place entirely on this really interesting looking like practical alien planet. Just these two characters until like the alien, which is this sort of sexless, like asexually reproducing being, produces a child, and then they have to be like a little family unit, and Dennis Quaid is to be like this, right? Yeah, this to be this like kid's dad, as they continue to work together for survival and getting off the planet. It's a very simple, small little movie, but it's an interesting one. Consider Enemy Mine.
Sure.
If it airs anywhere.
There you go. Good stuff. I mean, there's some obvious recommendations, like all of the influences on this film. There's the Star Wars, there's the Lord of the Rings, right? There's Dune, stuff like that. Stuff that we've covered here on the show. One that I wanted to pull out was Destroy All Monsters.
Okay.
This is a kaiju film where a bunch of different kaiju kind of team up. Or I guess in the world that they live in, a bunch of the kaiju live on an island. Humanity has kind of locked them onto that island, but then aliens invade, and the King Ghidorah shows up, and all of the kaiju team up to beat King Ghidorah. It's kind of wild. It's kind of it's fun and funny and cheesy, and there's just like baffling effects and weird, like I feel like it would fit in with this. It'd be a good like 1-2 punch.
Okay.
With this for sure. But yeah, even like I'm looking at stuff that we've done here, even like Young Frankenstein.
Okay.
Would be an interesting one. I think it has that like older feel to it. It's not the like swashbuckling stuff, but they're like
but it's very clearly like a heightened genre pastiche and homage.
Exactly. Yeah. It has the sci-fi in there. It mixes in some horror stuff. It mixes in a few like comedic. It mixes in a few comedic elements. Stuff like that I think would be interesting to recommend or watch around this. And then, you could always go back to like Conan the Barbarian or something like that. So there you go. I think those are some good recommendations, things to check out. Melissa, it is your turn to do the pitches for this next week. So what have you got?
So we are recording this on a Saturday morning instead of a Sunday morning. We had a scheduled conflict tomorrow, so we had to move it up, which we very rarely do. And as I mentioned earlier, last night I got a new phone and spent the entire night just setting everything up with the new phone. I had a set of pitches I wanted to do, but they were going to be more research to figure out exactly what it was. So I didn't have time to do that. So this is going to be one of the very rare occasions where I make an executive decision and I give you something and we're just going to watch that thing. But I assure you, I do this with your best interests at heart. This is something you are going to like. It's been on my list for ages. I'm bewildered we haven't gotten to it already. So I think it's about time we do this, because the creators of this show have a new movie out in theaters, which you just saw. Kyle, to mark the opening of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, we are looking at one of the earlier works from Lord and Miller, and we are going to watch Clone High.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were about to mention. Yeah, I know of Clone High. I really don't know anything about it. I think I've seen it more recently, in the sense that it is made by the same creators of Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, all of that good stuff. So it's just come up with their name. Like, hey, they also did this other thing. Go check it out. It's on Max.
Yeah, and it's getting a
HBO Max. Come on. Yeah.
it's getting a second season or a revival of some kind. So I thought it's good timing. I didn't look very far into the details of that, but yes, time for Clone High, a 13 episode, half-hour animated series available to you on Max.
Good stuff. I'm excited to check it out.
Do you know what you are pitching next week?
I do not.
Do you want to know what I was planning to pitch? Because you can just take this theme if you want it.
Sure. What was the theme? Or do you want to keep that theme in your back pocket?
No,
because you can.
I wanted to use it this month. So if I'm not using it, I want to offer it to you. If you would like to take it for next week, I wanted to pick out some queer-focused movies highlighted in Van's video store from the last season of Yellow Jackets.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd totally be down for that.
And the reason why I didn't go through with it is that I'd have to like go back, find like breakdown videos, find people highlighting. All right, so these are all the movies you can see in the background.
Post, yeah.
Right. I'm like, I don't have time to research this. So I'm doing something else, and I'm going to ask Kyle if you want to do it next week. You don't have to. I'm just giving you the idea. It's out there.
Sure. Yeah. If nothing else, I feel like for Pride Month, why not do like a queer focused something, right?
The specific, I was going to introduce it as Sapphic Tales of the VHS era.
There you go. That sounds great. Yeah. So I will look into that and see if we can make that work down the road.
It's up to you, but you're welcome to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Cool. Well, that about wraps us up then for our podcast here on Krull. Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities.
There you go. You guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer on Twitter. And if you'd like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts on Twitter. So please go like, share, and subscribe. You guys know the deal with all of that. If you're watching this on YouTube, we got a few more videos over there for you all to check out, and that would help us out a bunch as well. But yeah, keep an eye out for all the exciting stuff that we got coming up here. This has been number 256 of the review show. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.